Welcome back to the Comicstorian channel, where we take some of your favorite comic books, video games, TV shows, and movies, and break down the universes within your favorite pop culture element into a fun narrative. We bring it to you as an audio drama, acting out voices and pretending like we actually know what we're doing here. Smallville is a television show that aired on television for 10 seasons, telling you the story of how Clark Kent learned to be Superman, but it neglected one key factor. It didn't actually turn him into Superman by the end of the show. It was like the last scene. The comic series, Smallville Season 11, continued as a digital release, telling you the story of his journey to be actually Superman, and how he learned to do what he can and team up with the rest of the DC Universe. Our first two videos pretty much gave you the status quo, in which we got to see how Superman, Lois, and Lex are dealing with their current situations, while learning a few intricate pieces of information on the entire universe as a whole. Our last episode introduced you to Batman. Batman was on a journey with his sidekick Nightwing, who's actually Barbara Gordon in this universe, to find the killer of his own parents, Joe Chill. The Man of Steel got in the way of that by battling against Batman and trying to prevent him from doing what he may regret to Joe Chill. Their journey brought the two of them to find a villain who was dealing in weapons, Oswald Loomis, who, as we discovered, is now working with Mr. Freeze. And that's where we last left off. Now, if you guys want this series to continue after you watch this video and you like it, give me any comment you down below. Be like, Benny, I want Smallville. I know you guys do, but the more comments and the more likes you give this video, the bigger the chance of YouTube putting it into the proper algorithm so that this isn't going to hurt the channel. Typically with older storylines, it's hard for us to keep doing them because people stop watching them, but if you keep commenting it, it will start recommending it to other individuals, which will allow the video to stay on the channel. Also, if you want to chat with me directly and tell me, Benny, I want this stupid comic to continue, probably word it a little bit better, maybe don't yell at me, find me over on Twitter at Comicstorian. We're working on building up our Twitter brand properly and could use your help with that. We're located at Comicstorian and we talk primarily about comic books. The gun fires out of Oswald Loomis's hand, the bullets traveling along a blast from Mr. Freeze's ice ray, forcing Batman to leap to the side. He reaches for his utility belt, throwing a handful of tiny explosives that bring down a section of the ceiling onto the villains. "You really are faster than a speeding bullet, aren't you?" Batman asks, turning to Superman, who seemingly hasn't moved. "I used to be faster, before I could fly," the Man of Steel tells him. Batman quickly fills Superman in on who Mr. Freeze is, while the Man of Steel tries to figure out why Loomis went from weapons designer to supervillain. "Perhaps I can shed some light on the situation," the man states as he pulls himself free of the rubble, dusting himself off. "I'd like to prove to Intergang why the prankster is a worthwhile investment." He smirks. The two villains turn, aiming their weapons at our heroes. Quickly, Superman tells Batman to get Joe Chill to safety before turning back to the enemies. "Mr. Freeze, Loomis, I'd recommend you both stand down. I don't want anyone getting hurt," he tells them. Mr. Freeze fires, but the cold barely slows the Man of Steel down. Loomis smiles, firing his own pistol, but Clark merely stands his ground as the bullets sail across the room. At the last second, they twist and turn down the hallway, chasing Batman and Joe Chill. Superman collapses his hand, sending the villains through the walls as he calls for Batman to watch out. The Dark Knight stops mid-run, turning, avoiding the bullets at the last second. They crash through the wall, turning again in midair to hunt their targets. They keep moving. Batman hooks a grapple gun to Chill's chair, lifting him to safety as the bullets hone in on them once more. He stands his ground, letting the rounds impact his Kevlar cape, smoke filling the room. As Loomis pulls himself free of the rubble once again, he pops the magazine from his pistol and reloads a fresh one. "My dear Superman, now I understand why Toyman had such a good time dueling with you," he says with a smile. The man aims the pistol, firing again, but heat vision crosses the room, burning through the lead bullets to reveal the kryptonite beneath. The bullets find their mark. Elsewhere in the building, Batman tries to push away the smoke that fills the room. He can't see, and he's needing to activate his bat vision. Staring ahead, he finds that Mr. Freeze stands before him, ice cannon aimed. "Getting paid somehow makes this moment less exquisite," the villain notes before firing. "Goodbye, Batman." Meanwhile, over at LexCorp Tower. "So you're saying I touched your face? Lex states, looking at Otis. The pair are interrupted as the phone buzzes, and Lex answers to reveal an irritated Oliver Queen. In the watchtower, Chloe tells Oliver to keep Lex talking. She needs time to hack Lex's satellite to figure out where Clark is. I got another one of your charming coded emails about an hour ago, Oliver tells Lex. On the other side, Lex makes a face, telling Oliver about how they just discovered that he has been sleepwalking. Maybe my subconscious is trying to tell us something, Lex says with a small grin, but a shock appears on his face when Oliver answers with, seems like your subconscious is trying to tell me something. Lex quickly hangs up and tells Otis to go home for the night. It would seem my sister and I have to have a little talk. In the watchtower, though, it's quickly becoming apparent that Superman is down. In the federal safe house, Loomis taps on the icy wall of a frozen Batman, and the two villains take their leave of the scene. The ice cracks and begins to melt, though, as Batman's suit heats up. He frees himself, gasping for air, and then he quickly gives chase, following the two crooks upward, stopping, though, gasping when he finds Joe Chill. The man who killed Bruce Wayne's parents lays dead on the floor. Anger fills the Dark Knight, and he begins to drive his fist into the icy chunks that were once Joe Chill. He moves quickly downstairs to find Superman on the ground, his body shriveling from the kryptonite poisoning. He leans over the body, calling Nightwing on the comms. Superman's down, he explains, bullets in his chest and abdomen. Lead shielding in his insignia is keeping any of it from hitting his heart. But he's in bad shape, lost a lot of blood. Nightwing warns him to get out of the building. The feds are closing in fast. Batman stops, though, taking time to remove the bullets from the hero. Air cover is thick for me to get the hoverbat in, Nightwing warns him, but Bruce just stops, looking around. No, send the car. Green Arrow revs the motor on his motorbike, letting Watchtower know that he is coming in as backup. He turns at the sound of engines, throatily rumbling behind him, though. You've got to be kidding me. Outside of the safe house, the head agent's phone suddenly rings and an unknown voice comes over the line. I highly recommend you and your men clear a path for an incoming emergency vehicle, Nightwing tells him as the agents yell at her over the phone. The agent and Lois turn as the Batmobile rumbles onto the scene, throwing police cars out of the way like they're nothing. It smashes through the side of the building, throwing rubble everywhere, and Batman drags Superman across the floor as the federal tactical team kicks through the door. Suddenly, the Batmobile comes out of the building, screeching away into the night, as someone tells Lois that Batman has a wounded Superman. Like hell he does, she hisses, grabbing one of the police bikes giving chase. The Batmobile rumbles down the road, and a line of flashing police lights follow it. Lois yells over her comms as Chloe continues to change traffic lights so that no civilians get caught in the chase. Suddenly, Oliver Queen is alongside Lois's bike. How's your boy? He asks over the whipping wind. My fiance is bleeding out in a tank, driven by a man dressed as a bat, she screams at him. Inside the Batmobile, Batman takes a screeching turn that shifts and brings a groan of pain from Superman. Good, you're not dead yet, he growls. Stay with me, Superman, he orders, when suddenly Clark groans his name to the Dark Knight. Good to meet you, Clark. How do I fix you? Tell me who to call. Outside, Chloe patches through to Lois, letting her know that they are on a party line. Miss Lane, this is Batman's associate, Nightwing. Nightwing quickly fills her in on the situation, asking that she trusts them. Nightwing to Batman. Miss Lane says that you need yellow sunlight. Perhaps you didn't notice, but I have my hands full. He growls as the Batmobile rumbles towards a line of police cars, yelling at them to get out of his way, but the cops are moving. Fine, he hisses as he turns the wheel, sending the car into a drift. The Batmobile goes into a tumble, and he begins to slam a few buttons. The cops watch as the Batmobile tumbles over their heads, the wheels twirling until the car comes to a rest on the other side of them and keeps going. So that happened, one of the officers notes. If I'm going to get these slugs out of him, Batman tells the group coming on the party line, someone's going to have to give me some breathing room. Oliver nods, telling Batman that he'll buy him some time. He fires an arrow into the air, leaping forward onto the windshield of a police chopper. Can I bug you for a second? He asks with a grin as he taps on the glass, bringing a surprised look from the pilot. Inside the Batmobile, Batman adjusts as Nightwing takes control of the car. He shifts, pulling out a scalpel, and he begins to go to work on the bullets in Superman's skin. I've only ever pulled bullets out of myself, Clark. I can't guarantee that this won't suck, he tells him as he goes to work. But then, with the bullets removed, Batman reverses his suit's red sunlight generator to shine yellow light onto Superman. In the watchtower, Chloe breathes a sigh of relief as Clark is out of the woods. She gets on the comms telling Oliver to let the cops know that Batman is innocent. You bet, as soon as I get a chance, Oliver tells her as he kneels on the ground, his hands behind his head as the officers train their weapons on him. Let's get my lawyer on the phone too, just for fun, Chloe. In their base, Oswald Loomis turns with a smile to Victor Fries as the crook walks down the stairs. His breath comes out in icy puffs as he motions to the screen that he's watching. Batman is alive. Superman is wounded. The world might not know that they've gone to lick their wounds, but thanks to my homing bullets, we do. He grins as the satellite shows him an image of Batman's tanker at the docks. The next morning, Lex Luthor comes into his office watching the news from last night's chase. Finally, he asks Otis to leave before turning to make himself a drink. It's a shame that you couldn't get the typing thing figured out, he says to Tess as he pours. Fine motor skills aren't that easy to master when you're driving from the back seat, she notes on the couch. Luthor smiles, though. Everything is going well in his world. Superman is wounded and Batman is hunted. He turns, crossing the room, letting Tess know that she will no longer be taking control while he's asleep. He lets her know that he'll begin sleeping from now on, strapped to a bed in a room that is locked from the outside. You'll be getting out no further warnings, garbled or otherwise, to Queen. At the docks, on board Batman's tanker, the Leviathan, Clark opens his eyes to a shining light and Lois leaning over him. Where am I? He asks as he sits up. Lois explains that Batman saved him and that they're on his really big boat now. Lois isn't overly happy about their secrets being revealed, but Clark felt it was necessary. Think of it as a professional courtesy, he tells her, but she's still not happy. But at least he's fine and she'll have a hell of a story to write. Clark tells her to hold up on that, though, with the world thinking that he's dying. It gives me the element of surprise when we go after Loomis and Freeze, he explains. Barbara Gordon comes walking in, offering Superman a glass of orange juice and introducing herself to Lois. He leaves them to the discussion as he heads off to find Bruce, finding him and offering the juice to him. Again with the juice, he growls. Barbara is worried about your vitamin C intake. She's worse than my butler. First world problems. The two set about trying to locate the lair of Loomis and Freeze. Victor needs extreme cold to survive outside of his suit, so Clark points Bruce to the Hobbs River shipping area. We've got refrigerated facilities and spades. Quickly, they begin to look for a cold area that also gives off radiation from the meteor rock that Loomis is using, and they find the spot. There we go, Bruce notes, tapping the spot on the screen. He gets up, heading back into the armory. They should know that Clark won't last with that much kryptonite in one place, and Bruce can't survive at low temperatures. You didn't think that I was down here welding for my health, did you? He asks, reaching for the pieces of armor that he was working on. In the kitchen, Barbara and Lois turn away from the conversation that they were having to see an armored Superman and Batman standing before them. Ladies, Batman and I are going to step out for a bit, Clark tells them. A few moments later, the duo are traveling through the underwater tunnels in the Bat boat. Shortly afterward, the docks are invaded by a group of intergang hitmen. Let's go pay Superman a visit, one of them smiles as the crew load up their weapons. Back at the base, Loomis watches as the kill squad moves in on the boat, a large smile on his face. Beside him, Freeze finishes putting his armor on, informing Loomis that he plans on taking the money that they earned from this job and returning to Gotham, where he will pay for the next round of treatments for his beloved Nora. But Loomis just smiles, pulling out a remote control from his pocket, reminding him about all the upgrades that he put into the suit. Pain lashes through Freeze's body as the suit begins to move without his control. What have you done? He cries out, and Loomis just laughs, welcoming Mr. Freeze to Puppet Town. I'm not finished yet, he tells him, leaning over Freeze's body. You still have quite a role to play, he tells him. I'm about to show everyone what it really means to get pranked. At the Nellis Air Force Base, 50 miles outside of Metropolis, all the drones suddenly come to life. The crews begin to run through the hangar trying to figure out what is happening. And inside the tower, the toys that Loomis smuggled into the kids' meals of the tower control finished giving them access to everything. Back at Loomis's hideout, Batman and Superman survey the scene. Looks like the happy couple have had a spat, Superman notes. But suddenly, Superman senses a heartbeat and the two turn as the wall behind them explodes. I see you boys went shopping, Loomis notes as he steps through the wall in the new battle suit. So did I! The villain takes a swing, forcing the heroes to dodge away. Great, another robot, Superman notes. You get used to it. Loomis points at one of his monitors, telling him how Mr. Freeze is stalking through downtown Metropolis right now. His power cells are about to overload and they're going to freeze everything within a mile. Batman wastes no time heading back to the Batboat. Can you handle Freeze? Superman calls over his shoulder. In my sleep. Loomis tries to stop Batman, but Superman steps in his way, blocking the crook's attack. Prankster laughs, opening his chest to reveal a chunk of kryptonite, but Superman just grins behind the protective shielding of his new suit. Back on the Leviathan, Barbara stretches into another yoga pose as suddenly the ship's alarms begin to blare. Lois storms in, seeing the kill squad beginning to move through the ship. Are you ready for a fight? Lois calls over her shoulder, and as she turns, she sees Barbara is now dressed in the Nightwing costume. No, I'm ready for an ass-kicking. Both women pause, and Lois raises an eyebrow. I know what I said, Barbara says, embarrassed. Meanwhile, in Metropolis, The police duck behind their cars as Freeze sends another blast their way. He tries to call out to them, telling them that he is not in control of his actions. I have no quarrel with the people of Metropolis, he tells the officers who yell for him to stop shooting then. An explosion suddenly slows the Crook down and Green Arrow looks down on the scene, firing another arrow, this one topped with a bright red boxing glove. I had two choices, he notes. Yell, chill out, or nail you with a boxing glove arrow. Freeze struggles to his feet, letting Green Arrow know that he appreciates the variety. I would advise you to stand clear, he tells the Emerald Archer. I'm about to explode. All around them, things begin to freeze and massive ice spikes begin to pierce objects. Green Arrow starts running, trying to get the civilians clear of the area. This is a fight. We can't win, he calls. Aboard the Leviathan, Nightwing and Lois press back to back, breathing heavy. What's your count? Barbara asks, looking over her shoulder. 8, you? The two jump back into action, throwing their fists and kicks at their attackers, calling out a new number every time one of the thugs goes down. Nightwing knocks Lois to the side as a gun goes off, throwing batarangs to disarm the attacker. They pause briefly before a new group shows up, aiming their weapons at the pair. You know we're screwed, right? Barbara asks as she drops into a combat pose. Never let them see you sweat, Lois tells her as she rushes into the room. Back at Loomis's lair, though, Superman is thrown through another wall as Loomis moves in for another attack. He manages to get a hold of Superman again, and using his suit's strength, he rips the lead armor off of him. Everything's coming up, Loomis! The villain smiles as Superman falls to the ground, the kryptonite immediately weakening him. He lunges, though, ripping free some of the wires from Loomis's suit. The torn wires begin to send sparks flying through the combat armor, bringing it down hard. Suit or not, the meteor rock will kill you! Loomis cries as he pulls himself free, but Superman doesn't care anymore. He grabs the Crook and begins to pull him out of the room. Not if I take it out of the equation, he tells him. Turning back, he uses his heat vision to bring the roof down on the kryptonite before turning back to Loomis. Was working with Intergang worth it? And Loomis smiles. It was awful. I never liked working with them, he tells him. Superman is confused, but Loomis just smiles more. He knew that eventually Intergang would get tired of him, so he decided to deal with them. Don't worry, their blood will soon be on your hands, he grins. Superman pulls him in close. What did you do? Back at the harbor, though, the drones come in fast, aiming for the Leviathan. Missiles launch, sailing across the sky and detonating hard. Nightwing, Lois, and the thugs are tossed as the ship lurches in the water, and then the whole ship begins to capsize as it takes on water. Meanwhile, in the city, Green Arrow and the cops duck behind cover as Freeze's suit overloads and a blizzard whirls around them. What do we do? The cop asks. I don't know, Green Arrow tells them honestly, when suddenly Batman lands on the ground next to them with Green Arrow shocked by his thermal armor. Better than a boxing glove taped to an arrow, the Dark Knight notes. He crosses through the storm, his armor protecting him. Freeze tries to warn him about the overloading power cells, but Batman knows and plans to take them out of the equation. He pops the power cells free, and Freeze falls to his knees on the snow-covered street. Batman, your ingenuity never ceases to amaze me. Later, as the police are taking Freeze away, Green Arrow comes up to the Dark Knight and lets him know that he paid for all the damages from the police chase the other night. Where do I send the bill? He asks. Batman stares at him for a second before turning away. I left my checkbook in my other tights, he informs him. Suddenly, the pair see Superman rip past overhead. Batman launches into the air as Arrow heads to his bike. Inside the sinking ship, both Lois and Nightwing continue to save the Intergang thugs that tried to kill them. You see the irony of this, right? Lois asks as Nightwing helps pull her out of the water. But they're stuck now. Both women turn to their would-be assassins, letting them know the plan. They're going to open the door to the hold and let all the water in, and then they're going to swim for it. That plan is awful, one of the goons comments. Never stopped me before, both women note in unison as they head to the door. Suddenly, the whole ship shakes again and everyone is thrown to the ground. What the hell was that? And outside, Batman and Green Arrow look as Superman lifts the boat over his head. You guys mind giving me a hand? He calls out to them, and both men look confused as Arrow shouts up, How? Clark looks around. Help find me a place to set this down. Later, in the aftermath, Lois looks down on the article about Superman and Batman saving the day. You don't think he'll mind getting second billing, do you? She asks Clark over the phone. Naming him in the headline is probably more than he'd like, Clark tells her. He hangs up the phone with Lois, and he descends on Gotham City. He finds Bruce Wayne in Crime Alley, the place where his parents were shot. How did you know where to find me? He asks. Alfred told me where to go. Bruce knows that he's lying. Alfred would never give up his position, but he knows that he didn't want to get Barbara in trouble. The two talk, telling of their parents. Clark knows that Bruce doesn't just leave flowers for his parents, though. He leaves them the piece of him that died that day as well. You might have a knack for the detective thing after all, Kent. Bruce tells him before turning to shake his hand. Give me a call if you ever need anything. Clark asks for one thing though. He wants to know what Bruce did with Freeze's power cells. Back in Metropolis, Oliver and Chloe are walking through the city streets. Oliver's a little jealous that Green Arrow didn't even get mentioned for helping save the day. But he doesn't have a tank, But he does think that maybe he needs a sidekick. Never thought of myself as a father figure though, he notes when suddenly Superman flies overhead. Chloe looks shocked as snow begins to fall from the sky as Clark crosses by with Freeze's power cells. The couple pull each other in for a hug, and Chloe finally tells Oliver, I'm pregnant. So they hug again, and the snow falls all around them. And that concludes Volume 2 of the Smallville comic series. Now, like I said earlier, if you guys want this series to continue, I can't have it becoming a detriment to the channel. That means giving it a like, subscribing to the channel, and giving us comments down below. The more comments we get, the more YouTube goes, oh, people like this video, and it recommends it to more people. The more people that watch it, the less it damages our channel by being a low view video. Older storylines like this, people aren't looking for them. And because of that, we need to tell people that it's out there by basically making comments down below. So you literally just have to say, Benny, I want more Smallville. And that's all it takes. And don't forget, if you want to chat about Smallville and what you're loving about it and what you thought about Batman's portrayal and Nightwing's portrayal, hit me up on Twitter at Comicstorian. I would really appreciate it. Anybody who gets on there and follows us, as it will help us grow that brand properly, something we haven't really been focusing on in 6 years. Either way, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and if this is where you're going to be ending your journey with us, thank you for your time and your support. Otherwise, consider subscribing to the channel, hitting that bell for a notification so that you know that we are going to be doing more of these. And also keep in mind, this along with many of our videos are released early access over on our Patreon. If you really want to support in continuing this series, consider joining our Patreon, getting early access to every video we do here, every video, and unedited versions of the podcast. Thank you for your time. And I'll see you next week right here at Smallville Season 11.